Hi, welcome to episode 21, when we're going to start talking about intervals. Intervals refers to how far away pitches are from each other. And we're just going to start with the basics today. In fact, we're just going to start with some super duper basics. I'm going to start on the staff today, and then we'll get to letters. I want to show you something cool about intervals. There's an interval of a note to itself. That interval is called a unison. It's also called a prime. Prime meaning one, unison meaning one. So basically it's a one. No one calls it a one. Or like a first. But you'll see why I'm saying that. This note to this note is called a second. Because this one is called a 1, and so this one has to be called a 2. So when you're counting an interval, you count from including you count the first note as 1, and then you count up to the next note. So this interval is called a third. 1, and then you skipped this one, and you did that one, right? Can you guess what this interval is called? Yeah, that's right, it's a fourth. I know, rules of style. I just switched from writing them out to numbers. Either one is fine, it doesn't matter. We'll just get up to an octave today. We don't call it an eighth, we call it an octave. And if you want to shorten this one, it has a VE on it. But it comes from the word eight. I've talked about this before, but on the list of like weird and kind of dumb things about music theory is the fact that we call the distance from a note to itself, which anyone today who is making up this lingo would call it zero, right? If you don't move at all, you've moved zero. And they'd call this a one, like a first, and this a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. But in the time when they made this stuff up, that's not how they thought. They called this a prime because they thought of it as the first note. And so from the first note to the second note is a second, from the first note to the third note, right? They started on one because they were kind of using counting numbers. There's the ancient Greeks who did this. The ancient Greeks kind of first made this kind of thing up, I think. I might be wrong. The way they did math was way different than the way we do math. They were way more into geometry and way more into like proportions, not so much into specific numbers, if that makes sense. I've talked about this before. Music is very well suited as a body of work, or as a body of knowledge to study using that ancient method. Even though these names are dumb, it at least reflects like the better way to think about music, that is as a system of relationships and as a system of actions, rather than a system of just things and like nouns, like things. Wait, yeah, okay, intervals. So check this out. I never even wrote a clef on here, right? So it doesn't matter what clef. I could write any clef I want here. This would still be true. I could write a bass clef, treble clef, alto clef, tenor clef, soprano clef. I could write like some like long since out of use clef, like the French violin clef, which is a G clef except the G is on the bottom line. It doesn't matter. I could use any clef. The point is, if your two notes are the same, it's a unison. Even if you adjust one, we'll get there in the future. But like even if we like raised this one, but not this one, it would still be called a unison, but we'd call it a diminished unison or an augmented unison, depending on which one you're measuring from. We're not going to worry about that. When you talk about intervals, there's two aspects you have to worry about, and this one is the quantity or size of the interval. Same thing, means the same thing. The interval quantity or size you express as a number. You can say unison or prime instead of one. The rest are second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. They're always like the I don't know what you call this kind of number with a th after it. I forget what that's called. Is it an ordinal? No, it's not an ordinal number. Whatever. And then octave. And then you can get bigger than an octave, and we'll get into that on some future episode that talks about intervals a little more. Now, if you change the clef, you won't change any of this quantity of these intervals, but you will change their quality. So quality and quantity are the two aspects of intervals you have to worry about. Intervals come in a variety of qualities. It depends on the interval. Unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves have three qualities that they generally come in. They can be perfect. If they're 1/2 step bigger than perfect, they can be augmented. And if they're one interval smaller than 1/2 step smaller than perfect, they're called diminished. But seconds, thirds, sixths, I just love saying that word, sixths. Such a glitzy word. Seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths are different. They can't be perfect. It's not a value call. This is just a vocab. Instead, they can be major or minor. And then if they're even bigger than major, they're augmented. And if they're even smaller than minor, they're diminished. These are just I'm just introducing these terms and showing you like the quality of an interval is a little more complicated than talking about its quantity. Quantity you can tell just by looking at notes on a staff. And let's redraw these, and this time let's give it a clef and let's talk a little. Let's draw a C major scale. All the intervals in a C major scale. So C to C is what we call a perfect unison. C to D is a major second. C to E is a major third. C to F is a perfect fourth. C to G is a perfect fifth. C to A is a major sixth. C to B is a major seventh. And C to C, look, I just extended the line there. Okay, I ran out of room. C to C is a perfect octave. So C, C, perfect unison. C, D, major second. C, E, major third. C, F, perfect fourth. C, G, perfect fifth. C, A, major sixth. C, B, major seventh. C, C, perfect octave. Look, all the intervals from the tonic in a major scale, doesn't matter what major scale, we used C here, but it doesn't matter which one. Every single one of them is perfect in major, right? So when you're thinking about the qualities of intervals, if you're measuring intervals just up from the tonic of a scale, the interval to every other scale degree, so from scale degree 1 to scale degree 2 is a major second. From scale degree 1 to scale degree 3 is a major third, right? From scale degree 1 to itself is a perfect unison. From scale degree 1 to scale degree 4 is a perfect fourth. 1 to 5 is a perfect fifth. 1 to 6 is a major sixth. 1 to 7 is a major seventh. And scale degree 1 to scale degree 8 is a perfect octave. Again, those are just words. Major doesn't mean it's like more important than minor. Diminished doesn't mean like diminished in importance. Augmented doesn't mean it's like overblown. And perfect and imperfect don't mean they're like flawed or without flaw. These are just words we use, and it's all relating back to the major scale and to the relationship of each scale degree back to the tonic. So every scale degree, as it relates back to the tonic in a major scale, is either perfect or major. And it's kind of just a matter of kind of memorizing for now which ones can be perfect and which ones can be major. Seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, they can't be perfect. It's just the way we talk about them. Unisons, fourths, fifths, and sixths, they can't be major or minor, just the way we talk about them. I'll give you the short explanation of why. If you have a second or a third or a sixth or a seventh, there's two versions of them that like sound consonant. This is a big overgeneralization. So as someone who really knows their stuff might be cringing right now to hear me talk about it like this. But with a grain of salt and understanding that this is like a first approximation of what these words mean, you can have a major third or a minor third that both sound like okay. You can have a major sixth or a minor sixth that both sound okay. They both show up in scales and stuff all the time. But for unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves, there aren't two versions of them that sound good. If you move a fourth or a fifth or a unison or an octave, either side of perfection, it just instantly becomes dissonant. So you can almost think of these perfect intervals as like maybe a mountain with just like a pointy peak. And if you are on the very tippy top of the peak, you're perfect. But if you go just a little bit to the side, you're going to plop off the mountain and you're going to become augmented or diminished. Whereas with seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, you can think of like a mountain with a flat top. A mesa, if you will. And like you have room for minor and major notes on top of this mountaintop. And you could topple off the side still and become augmented or diminished. But there's like room in the part at the top of the mountain of sounding good or sounding consonant or whatever for both a major and a minor version of a note. Why is it like this? It's not like we just decided it's like this. This stuff all arises because of what music does and how music ends up being put together. And it's this kind of, to get this in your head, you got to like circle around and around it. So if this was like more confusing than helpful, then don't worry. We're going to like keep like coming around it concentrically. And you're going to get closer and closer to the middle. And the middle means you got it. At least you think you do, but check it out. You zoom in. The more you know that you don't know. And the more you know that you don't know, the more, I guess, I don't know the next part of that. Learning music can be frustrating because you learn so much and your brain learns, your ear learns almost faster than your brain sometimes, or sometimes the other way around, but when you get to a point that used to be your goal, by the time you get there, you have increased your ability to perceive new goals beyond what used to be your goal. And so sometimes it almost feels like you're moving backwards when you're learning music, especially when you're learning music both practically, like on an instrument or voice or whatever, and in like music theory class. Almost everyone gets misaligned a little bit where like their brain gets ahead of their fingers or vice versa. And either one of those experiences is really frustrating. Trust me, I'm a teacher. I've seen it in everyone. And it will happen to you if you pursue the study of music, where at some point you'll be able to understand all the stuff you don't understand, and it will get really discouraging. Or else you'll be able to like just naturally understand things like with your fingers on your instrument or whatever, and you'll be frustrated that your brain hasn't caught up and you haven't learned the vocab. I guess all I can say is like trust. I'm a testimonial that it is really awesome when the stuff starts coming together more after the hard work. And intervals is this. This is your intro to intervals. That's it. Bye. Bye.